So, Mega Man 7 is quite an infamous game. It's not the most infamous game in the franchise, we'll deal with that soon enough, but we have quite a game to deal with today. There are some issues people bring up with Mega Man 7, and it doesn't help that this was released on the same console and around the same time as Mega Man X. It also doesn't help that the team only had 3 months to develop the game. Yes, the whole game. Thankfully, a lot of the work was done for them thanks to Mega Man X, but that's still not a lot of time for graphics, music, and bug testing. If you saw my video on Final Fantasy II and its short development time, you'll know that a small window of time can absolutely destroy a game. And yet, Keiji Inafune said that he actually thought the experience was fun thanks to the team's high motivation. Does that mean this was a success? Or is it really as bad as some people make it out to be? Well, let's take a look at this game and see for ourselves. So the game begins with a short recap of the last game. Mega Man fought Dr. Wily, defeated him, and then threw him in jail after Wily had tried to take over the world. Also at the same time, Cutman apparently released a game because this newspaper is advertising for a Cutman 2. I guess Cutman really reformed after his battle with Mega Man. Anyway, Wily's in jail, but it turns out that Wily planned for this because he had some secret robots developed that would activate in case their master didn't respond within a certain amount of time, and now they're out for revenge, including a giant steamroller robot that looks to the camera and breathes fire at us. When we start up the game, we see Mega Man and Roll being taken by a new robot, Otto, to go see Dr. Light.
I can't believe Wily is loose again. Won't this madman ever stop?
He won't be loose for long. Once Dr. Light gives Rush and me our new enhancements, Wily is history.
Unfortunately, Otto's truck can't get much farther thanks to the unstable road ahead of him, so Mega Man has to go it alone.
Mega Man, take this helmet with you.
And then the music just looks at Otto's decision with utter bewilderment.
I guess not. Personally, I kinda like the other one.
There we go! Time to go kick some robot ass! Mega Man runs forward to the next screen where Dr. Light is on the ground.
Dr. Light, are you okay? I'll bring back Roll to take care of you.
No, Mega Man, we have no time.
Yes, no time to go 20 feet back and get Roll to bring her another 20 feet forward in what took Mega Man like 2 seconds to get to you. No, it turns out that Wily's using the attack on the city so he can break out of his prison cell. And he does! So Mega Man has to go after him. This first stage is a good way for you to get accustomed to the controls now that you're on the Super Nintendo. But it does sort of have a boss against the steamroller bot we saw earlier, though who's notably shrunken down. It goes down pretty easily. Then, all of a sudden, this robot in black armor shows up to fight. But after a while, the fight ends and this purple robo-dog comes down.
You're as good as they say, Mega Man.
You better tell me who you are.
I'm Bass and he's Trouble. I've been trying to stop Dr. Wily while you were gone. I say now that you don't need our help.
And then Bass and Treble teleport away, but not before leaving Mega Man a little concerned. Something seems off with these two. Anyway, after the stage, we get a look at the new password system, which now focuses on using a grid of numbers and pictures so that it's easy to remember. When we get to the character select screen, we see that there are only 4 Robot Masters, just like in the Game Boy games. Well, let's start with the one here who doesn't have a weakness to the other 3, Burst Man. Burst Man's stage is the water level of the game, and he's got plenty of spikes all over the place, but his stage isn't too bad. The gimmick with him is that his stage changes after you beat the mini-boss, Kaniganse, causing the water to change color and make you float. There are also various mines and count bombs around here and a section with Yoku blocks. Using the floating water, you can quickly access this R plate, and you'll find one in each of the stages, though some will be trickier than others. Afterwards, we fight Burst Man, whose fight can be frustrating, but not difficult. He'll try to use these bubbles that have bombs in them to send you up to the spiked ceiling and or explode you, then he'll make some bouncing bubbles appear to try and crush you or bounce you into the ceiling, and then he'll make bubbles like in Wave Man stage that try to lift you to your death. But I found a pretty easy way of dealing with him. Jump over each individual bubble bomb while charging up a shot. Then, when he fires the bouncing bubbles, fire the charge shot at him, and not only will it tear through the bubbles, but it'll send him flying back and cause him to reset his pattern. But be careful, because hitting him with a charge shot makes him drop several bombs onto the ground. Using this strategy, I was able to defeat him while only taking one hit when I originally recorded this. Admittedly, that's because I made a bad position at the last second, but still, that's pretty impressive, wouldn't you say? Every time you get a new weapon, Mega Man will return to Dr. Light's lab and they'll talk about whatever new weapon you get. Though in the Japanese version, Mega Man will also talk to Roll or Otto. Anyway, with Burst Man down, we get the Danger Wrap, which can encase enemies in bubbles and allow Mega Man to drop a bomb directly by pressing down when the weapon is equipped. With that, we can move on to the next Robot Master on the list, Cloud Man. Cloud Man's stage is in the sky with lots of gaps and ladders that can take you to quite a few places, including to some secret areas. I guess you could say it's a third-rate Airman stage if you want to be overly negative. Hell, some Pippies even show up on the stage, but that's where these come in to change things. The Telltales will change the weather on the stage depending on what you hit them with. Hitting them with anything other than the ice weapon we get causes them to bring out rain, which does exactly as it did in Toadman's stage. Also in this stage, you can find Proto Man, who is helpful for both giving you some hints and for an item we can get later. He's only in 3 stages, and this is one of them. Cloudman himself has some really dangerous attacks, but well, it's about time I mentioned that this game treats weaknesses differently than previous games. Before, Mega Man weaknesses merely did extra damage and maybe had some additional helpful effect. Here, however, weaknesses can turn some of the most difficult bosses into non-threats, and then turn even the non-threats into more non-threats. With the Danger Wrap, Cloudman will be encased in a bubble, which then blows up to damage him. The only challenge is to hit him before he strikes himself with lightning, or he'll be invincible until he discharges it. Either way, Cloudman goes down pretty easily and you get the Thunderbolt, a ball of electricity that splits in two vertically when it hits something, making it helpful for hitting multiple enemies or the same enemy more than once. Next up is Junkman, whose design I really like since it makes him look almost like Frankenstein's monster if he were a robot. His stage, on the other hand, is rather bland at best and annoying at worst. There's a lot of stuff around here that's able to hurt you pretty bad or just be annoying to deal with, and that includes these footholder enemies called Preparides. They don't hurt you unless they have junk blocks on their heads, but keeping the junk blocks off of them is the problem. Then there are these generators that you need to use the Thunderbolt on in order to get these platforms moving, so you can get the Rush Jet. The issue here is that if you position yourself incorrectly, you'll be crushed and killed. Junkman himself is at the end, and he goes down pretty easily. The Thunderbolt just takes him out without fail. His weapon, the Junk Shield, is one of the few shield weapons I'd say is actually worth a damn. It can protect you from quite a lot, and there's a visual indicator of how much power each Junk Sphere has. Plus, you can fire it in 3 different directions, but I never really found the need to do that. After that comes Freeze Man. Freeze Man stage is actually a pretty decent ice level. The ice physics are only really there to stop you from getting optional items for the most part, and not to annoy you. Plus, there aren't too many pits or spikes to worry about. You will want to get the items in this stage, however. The Rush Surge can only be gotten by jumping across these upper platforms, while you'll also want to get this letter plate up here. The Rush Surge is an item Mega Man can use to have Rush dig for other items. Used in the right spots, you can find some goodies, like the exit module here in Freeze Man stage, meaning if you go into a stage you've already beaten, you don't need to go all the way to the boss room to get out, which I'm guessing was only something that could be done on the Super Nintendo, considering Mega Man X has the same thing in it. Freeze Man himself can be very challenging, but using the Junk Shield, he's still kind of a threat? He can freeze you in place and still run into you even with the Junk Shield up, so you need to be more aggressive with it than the other shield weapons. That's actually key with a lot of enemies in this game. You need to be more aggressive against them once you've got their weaknesses. His weapon, the Freeze Cracker, can be aimed up or down with the D-pad, and when it hits a wall or enemy, it breaks apart into smaller unbreakable chunks like the Dust Crusher did. After you defeat the 5 stages, you're automatically sent back to Dr. Light's lab.
Dr. Light, what do you think of Bass?
His actions don't seem to indicate a threat. I don't believe he is our enemy.
Oh, yeah, that's why he decided to pick a fight with Mega Man for no reason. Anyway, the scene then shows that Wily is attacking the Robot Museum, so Mega Man has to go and stop him. The Robot Museum is basically one giant reference to the previous 6 games. There are background elements like these enemies that were in Nightman Stage's pillars, and Robot Masters from previous games as cameos. And the music is a mashup of Gutsman, Heatman, and Snakeman's themes. There are no enemies to speak of, but once you get to the end, we see Wily steal away Gutsman before sending a clown-like robot to attack and distract Mega Man. All you have to do is hit it in the head multiple times, and you win, plain and simple. After that, you unlock the last 4 Robot Master stages, which are actually unlockable right away with the correct password, though you still need to go through the first 4 stages as well. While we're here, I can get some other items too. See, the Robot Master weapons aren't just used as weapons as shown with the Thunderbolts. You can also use them to unlock secret areas of stages. So, for example, if you take the Freeze Cracker into Junkman stage, you can freeze some of the molten garbage to get the last letter plate, and boom, you just unlock the Super Adapter, which is like a combination of the power and jet adapters from the last game. Anyway, the next Robot Master to go after is Slashman. His stage is a giant forest area, but with robot dinosaurs everywhere. There's even a mini-boss where you have to fight a giant T-Rex. That's pretty freaking cool. Slashman himself is one of the most annoying bosses in the game, even with his weakness weapon. He's incredibly fast, but he doesn't like the Freeze Cracker very much. The problem is that when you hit him with the Freeze Cracker, he'll start sliding around the room, but this can still damage you if you touch him. After that, he'll jump off to this blocked off area and start dropping this annoying tar on your head, making it impossible for you to slide or shoot, and then sometimes he'll just drop down, and sometimes he'll Wolverine dive after you. I don't know what makes him do what, but it's annoying. After that, you get the Slash Claw, along with probably the dumbest question about the weapons yet.
The Slash Claw cuts things apart, doesn't it?
Really, Mega Man? That's your question about the damn thing? I don't know who to blame on that, so I'm just going to make a reference some of you might not get and say, "F*** you, Spanos." Anyway, the Slash Claw is a short-range attack that's pretty decent power-wise. It's got a surprisingly long range, but it's also rather dangerous to use if you're not careful. From here, the best bet is to go for Springman normally. But I wanted to try out a little glitch I knew about involving Shademan. Okay, that's a pretty cool Easter egg. If you hold down the jump and fire buttons at the same time when you select Shademan, not only will you get a new intro, but you'll also change the background music and the stage itself to come from Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Shademan's stage is a sort of Halloween-themed stage, complete with robot zombies, robot helmets for haunted armor, robot werewolves, and of course, bubble bats. There's also a mini-boss here in the form of this jack-o'-lantern thing called Van Pookin that opens up a specific path depending on which part of the body gets hit last. The outer shell opens up the path to the right, which I believe is easier, while the inner pumpkin opens up the path downward, which we kind of need a weapon we don't have yet. If you take the upper path from destroying the outer shell, you can use the rush search on the spot underneath Count Wily's picture and get the energy bouncer. But you need to get rid of the shield attacker first, because if Rush gets hit by anything while using rush search, he stops what he's doing and teleports away. Later on in the stage, Mega Man comes across Bass, who seems injured.
Damn, I was careless. I feel so stupid to have been defeated so easily. Maybe I should give up and leave Wily to you.
No, we're a team. Dr. Light would be glad to fix you up.
Thanks. I'm glad to have a friend like you.
Moving on to Shademan, he's actually rather easy. He has a pretty easy to follow pattern. He'll fly around in the shadows at the top of his room and attempt to swoop down, doing that 2 to 3 times. If he grabs you, he'll drain your health and add it to his own. Then he'll land on the ground and attempt to turn you to stone before unleashing 2 shots of his weapon, the Noise Crush, which will bounce off the back wall. He'll absorb the shots with his body, and then launch a large Noise Crush attack at you before taking to the air again. Like I said, pretty easy to follow, though a bit more difficult to avoid. By beating Shademan, we get the Noise Crush, which works like it did with Shademan. It'll bounce off the wall, and if you absorb it with your body, it'll unleash a larger, more powerful attack. It's also got a glitch that I wasn't quite able to unleash originally, but you'll see. Now let's go after the coolest Robot Master of the group, Turbo Man. Turbo Man's entire stage is a giant garage, and right at the start, you have to fight off this trucker Joe. Once you beat him, you can get through the rest of the stage. This section is really annoying because there are tires that come down from the ceiling that can bounce you around, which will bounce you either into the spikes or down one set of tires, which leads to dealing with another Trucker Joe. If you time it right, however, you don't have to worry. Use the Rush Search here to get a boost to the Super Adapter in the form of the Hyper Rocket Buster. You can also meet Proto Man in this stage, and he'll mention using the Super Adapter means you'll be too bulky to slide. The rest of the stage is a bit of a thing. During the second half of the stage, you have to deal with these flame pillars like in Fireman stage. But then in the room after that are these fire bars while falling in a long shaft. Kind of like in Quick Man's... Oh shit! At the bottom of the shaft, you'll come across the CC truck, which you have to destroy by hitting it in the eyes a bunch. When it's destroyed, we can finally get to the end of the stage and deal with Turbo Man. So, Turbo Man is normally weak to the Noise Crush on its own, but there's actually a speedrunning strategy I learned from YouTuber Pink Kitty Rose when she did her no damage run of this game. Just before entering the boss rooms of Turbo Man and the next Robot Master we'll be dealing with, if you fire the Noise Crush at exactly the right frame, it'll bounce back and forth along the wall and hit the boss before he can power up, thus beating it in one shot. It's not easy, however. It took me several attempts to do this to Turbo Man, and when I originally recorded these clips, it didn't even work because the Noise Crush just dissipated before it could beat either boss. From Turbo Man, you'll get the Scorch Wheel, which creates a rolling wheel of fire that races forward. It's not really the most intuitive to use. Now let's go after the Robot Master I should have gone after when I beat Slash Man, Spring Man. Yeah, when people said Capcom was running out of ideas, they were probably talking about this guy. At least Nintendo gave us a better Spring Man nowadays. Spring Man stage is actually pretty fun, I guess. There's a lot of bouncing around, but it can be kind of annoying, possibly sending you into enemies or spikes. There's not really anything of note here, other than this large room. Also, if you go to this top left corner, you can have this punching box hit the wall and go find this large bolt. That'll be important later. Battling Springman is pretty easy just as long as you don't use the Thunderbolt, because that would be stupid. Springman's weakness is the Slash Claw. Using it on him will send him to the start of a new pattern, where he'll jump into the air and send extending punches towards you. His weapon is also the weakness of Shade Man. So, about that Noise Crush glitch I mentioned. I was able to do this before on the Anniversary Collection, but it didn't work here for some reason. I don't know why it didn't, since I thought I did it at the perfect frame, but as I said before, it just stopped working before it hit Springman. Springman's not that difficult anyway. Springman's weapon is the Wild Coil, which sends a spring out in front of and behind you. If you charge the attack, you can make the springs bounce higher. That giant bolt we just found does have a purpose, by the way. When on the character select screen, you can press the select button to go to Auto Shop. While in Auto Shop, you can spend screws you found either on the ground or from enemy drops in order to buy things. So they're basically a more logical form of P-chips from Mega Man 4 and 5 for Game Boy. When you give Auto his giant bolt from Springman stage, however, he'll be much more efficient, and so he'll only need half as many screws to make items. But before you go spending a bunch of screws on things, know that you can only have 4 E-tanks and 4 W-tanks, just like in the Game Boy games. Also, everything in Auto's shop can be found somewhere in the game for free, so maybe save up your screws for an emergency. Once we get all 8 stages finished, we return to find Dr. Light's lab is in shambles.
Dr. Light, what happened?
Is that you, Mega Man?
Really? You're telling me Light somehow can't see 2 feet in front of him?
Base went berserk after I completed his repairs. He stole the parts for the new enhancements.
Base? I can't believe it.
Then Dr. Wily appears on screen.
Believe it, Mega Man. Bass and Treble are my creations. I knew you would be stupid enough to trust him and allow access to the lab. Now, Bass and Treble, who use the enhancements meant for you and Rush.
I'll make you pay, Wily!
Man, Mega Man seems as angry as his sprite looks. Anyway, we still have 2 more things I need to get. The first is in Slash Man stage. In Cloud Man stage, Proto Man said to try using the fire weapon in the forest level. so that's what we're going to do. When we get to this area of the level, we can use the Scorch Wheel on these trees to find some paths we wouldn't normally be able to find, and they'll lead us to a secret area where we can get Beat. Beat is a passive ability in this game. When used, Beat will pick us up out of bottomless pits, but it's hard for the little bird to lift Mega Man, so we can't go too far with him. The other secret lies in Shade Man's stage after we've gotten literally everything else. When you get to Van Pooken again, take the lower path and go into this secret path to come to a room with Proto Man.
So, brother, you're not as weak as I thought. Let's see which of us father made stronger!
And now we have an optional boss fight against Proto Man where he doesn't have a health bar just like in his fights in Mega Man 3. I don't know if Proto Man has a specific pattern he takes or if he has a weakness you can exploit, but I do know that if you charge up a Buster Shot and hit him, he'll charge across the stage and then either shoot you with 3 Buster Shots or charge up a shot behind his shield before firing. I basically just attacked him with fully charged shots and tried my best to dodge his attacks, healing up where I needed to until he stopped.
Maybe you are the superior model, Mega Man. Here, take this with you.
This is your Proto Shield. You can't give this to me.
It's okay. Take it. And watch your back.
And so we get the Proto Shield, which I never really used. I merely got it for completion's sake. From what I've read, it's basically a Sniper Joe shield. So long as you're not actually attacking or moving with this thing, you can protect yourself from projectile attacks. Anyway, with that, we can finally go after Wily. After getting some stuff from Otto for a recharge, that is. Wily's stages are... well, they're a bit long and kind of hard to remember. I do remember in the first stage there are these platforms that are like a mix between Crashman's and Gutsman's, and they also control the lights in the room. But that's all I could remember for the first 3 besides the big fights. The first and second stages have matches against Bass, but the second phase has him using the Super Adapter with Treble to transform into Super Bass. Cue your Nicki Minaj references here. I mostly took on these fights as Super Mega Man, who, as I said before, is a mix of the 2 adapters from the last game. Only instead of throwing an energy punch, he shoots his fist, which can boomerang back and also grab items like the Mega Hand could, thanks to the item we got in Turbo Man stage. The other 3 bosses are kind of a thing. The first is against Gutsman's upgraded body called Gutsman G. The second is against some giant turtle called Gamerizer, which, given the name, I guess is based off of Gamera. And the third is against this... thing. It's called the Hanya Ned Squared, and it's a bit of a thing. In Stage 4, we get rematches with the Robot Masters, but after we do all that, we get some item restocks before dealing with Wily himself. Wily Machine 7 will walk across or hop across the room, while having you deal with 2 tiny versions of itself. It can be easy to avoid, though still kind of difficult to at times. But then we have Wily Capsule, which is the boss that pretty much broke me and everybody else that played Mega Man 7. The Wily Capsule in this game is just one of the most aggravating bosses out there. It'll disappear and then reappear in a random place and shoot 4 balls of energy, which can end up being either fire, ice, or lightning elemental. Lightning is actually the preferred element here, however, because all it does is straight damage, but the other 2, oh god, those are annoying. Fire keeps you stuck in one place and will drain your life down every second you're there with no chance to break out, while ice actually freezes you in place while damaging you, likely setting you up for another attack with seemingly no way of breaking free. And it wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that these things will home in on you twice and are extremely difficult to avoid. On top of that, there's the fact that Wily will often appear in places where you can't hit him unless you use the Wild Coil. But using the Wild Coil can be unwieldy because of its weird arcing shot, and unless you fully charge it, which just spells trouble for you, you're unlikely to hit the thing. Not that there's any guarantee that you'd hit it if you did shoot a charged up shot. You'll need at least 2 E-Tanks to get through this fight, and even that might not last you. And if you die, you have to start over fighting both the Wily Machine and the Wily Capsule. This fight on its own took took me so many freaking tries, and it still gives me trouble every time I play through this game. If I ever make a list involving aggravating moments in video games, you can bet your ass this thing is going to be on that list, and it'll probably be very high up on that list. Oh, and to make matters worse, the developers intentionally made the boss difficult. As for why, it was probably because either they thought the rest of the game was too easy, or because someone at Capcom really hated their fan base and so wanted to punish them for it. But thankfully, I was finally able to take the freaking thing down! At that point, Wily begins surrendering, but Mega Man must have really hated that boss fight too.
I don't trust you, Wily. I'm gonna do what I should have done years ago.
You forget, Mega Man. Robots can't harm humans.
I am more than a robot. Die, Wily!
Too late, Mega Man. He who hesitates is lost. He shall return.
Then Base leaves with Mega Man teleporting out after him in time to escape the self-destructing base. Not the robot, but the place where they just fought. We even get to see Mega Man walking away with impressive use of Mode 7 technology as it explodes. Anyway, Mega Man 7 was a fun ride. Up until the Wily stages. The Wily stages weren't really that fun compared to the Robot Master stages, and that final boss is just the worst part about this game, hands down. It's bad enough that a lot of the other bosses in the game are easy, so it's an unnecessary difficulty spike, all things considered. The weapons are just kinda meh in this one. I mean, there's some good choices, but not that many. Also, that ending seems to come out of left field, with Mega Man just being so willing to kill Wily all of a sudden and going against the 3 laws of robotics. Even if you want to make an argument of the 0th law influencing Mega Man's decision, it still seems completely out of character for Mega Man to be willing to do so. That being said, I do like bass and treble, and I think that there are plenty of Robot Masters in this game that are really good ideas, like Turbo Man or Shade Man, and the Super Adapter is a pretty fun thing to use. Still, it wasn't nearly as well received as the NES games, and sadly the next game would be given an even colder reception. But we'll talk about that game next time, as we get energized for Mega Man 8.
Okay, Base clearly wasn't as good of an idea as I thought, but he may still be of some use to me. But I need more power. What's with these readings from outer space? Wait, they are coming closer. I need to move quickly. One of those 2 power sources could prove incredibly useful for finding a way to destroy Mega Man.